Are we live? Hi, guys.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming in for this broadcast. My name is Ryan Vickers, and I am the lead researcher on season 2 of Canada's game shows. And I feel I'm qualified to be here because I've been on 12 different game shows over the years. You've just watched the Game TV broadcasts of episode 201, The Evolution of Game Shows, and episode 202, The Focus on Food. With me tonight is Tess Garneau, director of the episodes. Thank you so much, Tess, for joining us.
Thanks for having me. This is great. This is really exciting.
It isn't. So, Tess, you were the director on these episodes. What is it like seeing them back for the first time?
It's nice. It's like I don't ever have TV at my disposal like that. So I just went over to someone's house who's in my bubble, and I watched the TV. I watched it with commercials, which I think was really nice, because normally, there's just black where we were putting that. My editor and I got to see it with the commercials, and that was really nice. Even though, you're like, get over these commercials, I want to see the show. It was like, this is good. Yeah, it felt really good.
Oh, wonderful. I just want to let the viewers know that they were going to be here for about the next 15 minutes, and we're here to discuss the episodes you've just seen. So please feel free to leave any questions you might have, and we'll try our best to answer them in the chat box. So Tess, let's get right into it. So the first episode was the evolution of game shows, and we started right in with reboots. Tess Marie Garneau, did you ever watch Just Like Mom? And if so, what would you have put in your wacky cake?
Okay, so I didn't watch Just Like Mom because I'm just a little bit too young for Just Like Mom. But I did a lot of research before the show because I wrote it as well. And so looking at it, I was like, this show needs to get in here. So, I worked with Ryan a lot, right? And, we were like, you were so excited about it. And I was just obsessed with the episodes, watching them again and again. And I would definitely have made mine horrendous. I would have ruined my mother. I think that would have been really fun. Yeah.
We played the game at a game show night a few years ago with friends, and I made people bake for each other, and I brought the horrible ingredients, and we just dumped in everything that we needed to. I want to point out, talking about Just Like Mom, it was a wonderful experience to get hold of Kathy. Without going into too much, I love the fact we got through to Kathy through her son, and her son was convinced that we were pranking him, that no one was doing this. So it was so nice to have Wes and Kathy and their family come on board. And Kathy truly is game show royalty.
Kathy is royalty, and she is a barrel of laughs. She's so much fun. I just wish that I could have cut more of her into the episode. She was just so much energy. It was nuts. She's told me this thing where people would ask her to come back on the show to do more under an alias name because she's so much fun. And there were certain shows, there's one with Monty Hall, and it was quite a serious show. And she had to she wasn't getting the answers right, but they were like, we'll see you again next week, Kathy. We're loving this energy. And she was like, but you'll be Betty next week.
Oh man, the secrets are coming out. I have to say as well that that split screen of Wes and Jackson, his son, was uncanny.
Isn't it amazing?
35 years apart. It was just wonderful. And Kathy was just wonderful to have. And you're speaking about more footage. If you folks either hop onto our YouTube channel or on canadasgameshows.com, there are additional clips. And there's a nice little 2-minute featurette on Kathy specifically, and all of the game show wonderfulness that she's done.
Yeah, actually, so she is this generational thing, right? So she went on with her son, and then her son went on with his son, which is super nice because it turns from the mom to the dad. It's great. And actually, speaking with the hosts of the reboot, there were loads of families apparently that came on. So loads of the kids who were on Just Like Mom wanted to be the parent on Just Like Mom and Dad, just so good.
You want to share it with your kid, right? So.
Really cool.
Why don't we move on to segment 2, which was new formats? Canada's Smartest Person is such a unique show to come out of Canada.
Yeah, no, it was a show that I think it doesn't have it's not praised enough. Like, it is
Agreed.
the cleverest, the coolest show. I half want to watch it a lot and half just want to like be in it. I'd be terrible at it.
I'm not gonna lie, I went to a taping in, I want to say season 2 or season 3, and I instantly regretted not having applied for it, because it's not just book smarts, it's logical, it's spatial analysis, it's musical, just these multiple intelligences, and that's what should be in an all-rounded smart human being, I think.
Right? It'd be quite good also if you had people who weren't well-rounded. You know, you have people who are like so good at musical, and then you're like, do this physical thing, and they're just like flopping all over. That would be quite a good episode too.
And I feel, again, going back to the Kidwell, that moment between Zoe and Liam. We have so many shows these days where people are a little more antagonistic than you'd like them to be. But in the fact of the matter is that Liam, arguably, that led him not to winning anymore, but just such positivity and almost the innocence of it all, I think.
I know that moment was like, okay, when you're editing, you are seeing the same moment again and again and again, right? So it's hard, you know, you cut in a laugh and you're like, oh, is it still funny? Like, no, it's funny, it's fine, but I've seen it so many times. That Liam moment gets me misty-eyed every single time. You're like, no, I can be cool. Like, I can get through this, and it's so good.
We'd like to remind you that Canada's Smartest Person, episode 1, was sponsored by Tissues.
Oh my God.
For all your editing needs.
Oh, it's so emotional. It was so good. And like, it was great because everyone I'm speaking to who had anything to do with a kid show was like, kids are amazing. Like, you would think that they're really competitive and like they haven't learned grace or tact, but they're so much kinder and they're so much more giving and more like, they're like, yeah, I may have lost or I might have won, but you're not a loser. Where like adults they're garbage. We're all garbage people now that we're older.
Well, you know what? On that moment, Tess, I'm lucky enough. I've been the host of Reach for the Top since 2013, and it always amazes me of the brightness of the young people in this country, and it always makes me feel better that I have such great hope for what's to come in the future of this country.
Yeah, I know. And I mean, they say that in there, and I think it's so true. It's like, it's such a nice example of seeing that. And we don't often get to see that, right? Like, as someone who isn't a parent or isn't a teacher, you're like, I don't know, kids might know stuff. But when you see them being able to display their knowledge and their compassion, all these things on a stage, it's such a nice window into that life.
And especially it's a stage that they're not necessarily used to, right? It's something that's new and foreign to them. So
yeah, I think there's a nice moment, and we see it in the episode where they go like, oh man, and right, like the floor drops out and everyone goes, we forgot we have to kick kids out of this. Yes. Like, they just are like, oh yeah, like parent thing, we'll just make it slightly smaller scale for humans and it'll be fine. And it's like, no, they're not small adults, they're kids, and like you're breaking them. And yeah, it's a really super interesting dynamic to see that happen, that even though it is possible, like it's not designed for kids, and all of a sudden everyone's sad, and it's so interesting.
And then we moved on to competition reality. You know, when I was growing up, you'd watch something like a Scrabble or a Sale of the Century or the $100,000 Pyramid. And it was 5 days and you're done, varying on the show, sometimes up to 10. But now we have these people that we need to root for, hopefully every week.
Yes, I know. So competition reality is a massive thread throughout the second season because, and you know, I've had some people while we were talking about like what this season coming up with, what is a second season? How do you follow up a season like this? That kind of the first season covers all of Canada's biggest shows. And a lot of those shows were in the last millennium, right? Yeah. The bigger shows. So then like, what do? Well, there's amazing shows like Canada's Smartest Person, but that's kind of like, there aren't that many new game shows. And so instead of saying there aren't any game shows in Canada, we really explored like, what is the evolution? What's happening? What are the shows that people are watching that are taking over the airways that are still fun and playful, and you have characters and games and challenges, but like, what have we done differently? Well, like as viewers, now we have a very different type of literacy with how we consume media, right? I know that this person wins in this way, and so I want a little bit more. And so I'm not saying game shows don't have more, and they can totally stand on their own, but what is this new thing that comes out of it? And so you'll see as this season goes on that there's so many different calls and references to competition reality. And that's because that's kind of like where we went. So for the last 20-ish years, we've gone in that direction, and now where are we going with it? So yeah, it isn't a total game show, but like a producer who's produced so many humongous competition realities, he was like, no, it's not this, but it's definitely sprung from it. So anyone who's a huge fan of one, even if they're hesitant to the other, it's definitely something that you can springboard into if you have a love for one. And I think that's really interesting.
And you know what, speaking of that, I will happily admit that I have applied for Amazing Race Canada more than one time. It never worked out. But in season 1, they had a contest where you could show up in various Canadian cities. So my friend and I did a 3-minute contest. And imagine our surprise the next day when not only we secured tickets for the finale, but we ended up winning the $5,000 grand prize in a lottery. I tell you, that was exciting. So I feel like I can say I'm Amazing Race champion without lying too much. I want to say hello to BP, who's watching us from Kansas City, the United States. Thank you so much. And BP has asked, how did you guys decide what shows to include in the series and which ones got left in the cutting room floor? I have some thoughts on that, Tess, but do you want to speak to that for a minute, or would you like me to go first?
Go ahead first, yeah.
Well, BP, one of the things happens is that we, at the start of season 2, we threw out a ton of ideas, and partly it comes down to sort of where the narrative can go. Sometimes it's a situation of who you can get access to. I know that was the case for us in season 2, and it really depends on where you can go with these things, but also what you want to showcase, and a balance of these things like competition reality and the quote unquote traditional game show.
Yeah, I think exactly like what you're saying. It's, I'm trying to think of like if there's one that like, well, I guess there's an example, right? So you just watched the food episode, and there was one called Food. Well, there was one called Food for Thought, which we had written into the episode, and it was all sprung off of how Supermarket Sweep was like this, but this was kind of a different version of it. And it just either you can't, and it just won't fit in, and something at the end of the day is just feeling like a wheel that like won't go into the cog, and like you just kind of have to trim the fat in some places. So it's tragic. And actually we did a massive interview and had all this great footage and had a whole act built around another game show that, you know, we had then an email from a producer who was like, no. We were like, okay, cool. So that's dead. Like, I don't even feel comfortable bringing it up, right? And so there's a lot of shows that Ryan and I were like I was writing and I was like, what about this person? He gets in touch and it's great. And then all of a sudden the floor falls out. Or that like, you know, you're working really hard and you have to be tunnel vision. Otherwise the show is not a show. It's not a focused show. It's just a mess. And so there are a lot of like darlings that we had to kind of leave behind. One of them was that Love, Cooking for Love. Do you remember that one? We were so excited about it. It was this like Canadian show where everyone, or the woman didn't know and the men were cooking for her. Yeah. And we were really excited about that one. And, you know, it was connected because the host of that then became the host of Top Chef, and we're like, this is going to be amazing. This writes itself. And, you know, for whatever reason, things have to go.
Yeah, and that's a tough decision. And the thing is too that Tess, you and I come at this in different sort of aspects. And I know I appreciated being part of season 2 and being able to sort of bring out the things from the doldrums. Internet, you're welcome. You're welcome for that Supermarket Sweep crash clip. Just before we get into food game shows in a second, I want to say that Arissa and her kid, can you just put up like the 4 hours of interview or whatever you did with just Arissa and her kid? We can watch that for years.
I'm so happy that you're bringing that up. I know. So Arissa, first of all, like a goddess, how she goes through, she has like the most eloquent things to say. She's the best interviewer. And then the whole time she has like a screaming child on her. And she tried, right? She was like, okay, I'm just going to like, give me 2 hot seconds. I'm gonna put this baby in this like tiny little crib I have next to me and we should be fine. And she'd be like, and she'd start to say this like wonderful thing. And then like the baby would explode next to her. And she was like, I was like, dude, like just hold your baby. And it ended up being the most heartwarming interview we possibly had. You know, and there was moments where I think like we both were looking at each other and being like, you just said the best thing ever. And your face is being like mauled, or he's like pulling out her hair, or whatever an adorable tiny itty bitty little thing does to a mother. Oh, he pulled her earrings out one at a time, and she's just like trying to put them back in and say these amazing things. And
well, that's what being a parent is, right? So
yeah, God, she's amazing at it. But I agree. Like, I could watch every second of Marissa, and every single thing she says is so quotable. It's so good. She's amazing.
A great sort of transitioning over to the food game shows, a great show coming out of Canada, Fridge Wars. Just something really, really new and something different. Just such a wonderful show. There, basically, we all have leftovers. They all exist. And yet we're forcing these super ranked chefs to cook with our leftovers and the kids judging them.
Yeah, I think something that came out of Fridge Wars that I think was exciting is as you're writing, you want everything to flow, right? Like we were saying. Mm-hmm. And so we didn't go after Fridge Wars because we were like, this is a fantastic show. We everyone must know.
In fairness, it is. And let's put
yeah, well, I was going to say, I got to. So I'll be there. But I was going to say, like, Fridge Wars is like, we loved that we had Emma Hunter, who's the host of it. She also will appear as like quite a quintessential, an essential figure in a later episode. And then we have Nicole Gomez, who's been through the entire reality competition. And so we're like, oh, well, look, this show has both of them. Isn't that interesting? And the more we watch it, like I was trying to just find a clip that I wanted from this, and I'm like watching every frame of it. So this show is insanity. It's so good. Like she says, it's amazing that it's like Canadian and American stations are buying it. That feels like so good for us Canadians who, we don't get to make as many shows as the US. And so it's amazing when that can happen.
I like the comment that, first of all, I liked every morning we jump into our own reality show. It's called our life. I feel that happens on so many levels. And we've seen sort of in a lot of cooking shows, a lot of it sometimes is, I can't believe you didn't do this right. Why is this overbaked? Why did you burn this steak? Yada, yada, yada. But now it's going sort of meanness to happiness, right?
Yeah. So I think that, we've seen that a lot with something like the Great Canadian Baking Show, where, the prize is a plate and you did great. And like, if someone is burning someone's rushing over and taking care of them. And then that thread is going through other shows. And especially like we saw with the children's show, like people just want to take care of each other. And it's nice. Like we've seen our like Simon Cowells and Gordon Ramsays, and we're like, okay, I've seen enough. Like I need it. And like Teresa says, the pendulum swings. So in 10 to 15 years, we might go right back to it. But for now, I think we're all like, I just need like a warm bath.
Yeah, you need to sort of just turn it off. Supermarket Sweep, Tess was talking about sometimes things don't make the air edit, but if you pop up onto the YouTube channel or the canadasgameshows.com website, there's a great piece on Tino Monte talking about a scavenger hunt. I don't want to spoil it in this, but I do encourage you to go look at it because it's really, really funny, and it speaks to the Canadian persistence of wanting to get something done. And I will quote it. It was brought up by, I think, Trevor Boris. If you don't go with the prosciuttos and the opus forms, you're going to lose. I will say that on the record. and it's great. Supermarket Sweep was just a show that was just fun and escape television, as so many times we want game shows to be, especially right now.
But it also is like something that sticks with you forever. Because like Sarah says in it, she's like, every time I'm in a store, I'm like, da-na, like
exactly, in the jingle. Yeah, it's not. Now, in fairness, every time I ride an elevator, I hum the music from Pitfall, which is another show that we didn't cover this year. It was covered last year. I like hello to North Cape Coastal, pardon me, from who's tuning in from Prince Edward Island, Eastern Canada. Hi, Cape Coastal. I went to Mount Allison. I've been to your island. I love it. And I love your ice cream as well. Said, how did you make a show like this during the pandemic? And was it super challenging? And I know Tess can speak a lot of that. A lot of this, sometimes we couldn't have people in studio. It just was not practical.
Yeah. I mean, it was a blend, and I'm sure that watching it, you can see the difference, right? Like you can see Brian's interview, for example, is obviously shot with lights and camera, and Then there were other ones who, let's say Emma Hunter or Nicole Gomez, they are having a Zoom conversation with me. So just like I am with Ryan right now, and then we would record it. We would record the live interview, and then I would take that, and my editor and I would put that into like these little TV screens, because the quality isn't as good, right? So you have to like shrink it just to make it work. But then you were like, well, you gotta make it fun. So that's where we're putting her in kitchens, and we're putting them into just like different situations, old timey TVs, brand new modern TVs. We had a really fun time doing that, but it was super challenging. It also wasn't like, go ahead.
And how many televisions do you now own in your house? Do you own all of those televisions? Like, is that how it works?
I'll never tell. Some things are production secrets. Yeah, I think the hardest thing was we did this at the beginning of COVID. So it wasn't like when everyone was like, oh yeah, COVID, we've had that for a year. And like now film is really taking off, and there's a lot of things being shot with like a lot of protocols. Like we were just like, everyone stay far away, put your masks on, wash your hands. And and some people were like not willing to come into the studio, which is totally understandable, even though we had like crazy guidelines. So we had to do a lot of it on Zoom. And, you know, we had people on the production team who were like, we could shut down any day. Like, we don't know if this is going to keep going. Is this going to be a show that stops halfway through? And like, we just had no idea what.
And the thing, I think, especially in the editing bay, you want to make it transition pretty well, so it doesn't seem like this is the show that's already done remotely. And I think people will still understand that, but you want kind of that balance, right?
Yeah. And I think also just like understanding how any of our like acceptance of Zoom has happened, because people are now used to having these conversations instead of real conversations. And so I think also the beginning, all of our team was looking at this footage going, oh, this feels weird. And then as it keeps going, I just watched it on a live broadcast and I was like, yeah, this feels fine.
Yeah.
Because now it's been a year, we've all been living in it. And so we see these television or these Zoom screens and you go, yeah, like I've watched the news where the newscaster is in that room. So it feels like a little bit more normal.
Well, and I think too is that when you spoke to putting them in the old timey TVs and the TV like above the kitchen, it's not just watching a Zoom call. I think that's what it really makes a difference that well. So, although in fairness, we had 6 of us, we could play match game and we can go on down that road. So, I want to say hello. Actually, I love seeing the comments you're leaving on the stream. Hello, especially to David Cope, who is tuning in from Australia. That is dedication.
Oh.
David Cope, I have very reasonable rates. And if you want me to do the search for Australian game shows, I can be hired for very, very reasonable cost.
Wow.
Speaking of fun shows, we're surprised it's Edible Incredible, a show that ran on the CBC for a couple of years, which is Supermarket Sweep meets a cooking show. And someone said to me, it's Guys Grocery Games. I said, but it's Guys Grocery Games before there was Guys Grocery Games.
Exactly. And it's like a candid camera moment too, which is really fun.
And when you have people like Julie Zwilich, is it hard to track down subjects for you, Tess?
Yes. So I want to be like, no, it was a breeze, but it was not a breeze. Julie, though, holy moly, talk about like the kindest, the most accommodating, the friendliest. Like she was just like, what can I do? Like, what do you need? And then you see her interview and she's got like professional lights in it. This was before people were buying their own lights. You know, she was just like amazing, the most positive, fantastic lady. But yeah, it's hard, Ryan. Like you would be, so Ryan is researching with me and I'm going, I think this would be good. And you go, yeah, what about this person? And then you go, they are literally an impossible person to find. Never mind. Like Ryan had to call the man. So the man who is in Just Like Mom and Dad. Just Like Mom and Dad. Yeah. He's like the son of Kathy. And so we wanted to find Kathy and she was impossible to find. So Ryan.
Well, in fairness, that's a common last name, right? So.
Well, exactly. Right. You have a very, like Julie Zwilich. It's a lot easier of a name. Plus, she was an actress. This is someone called Kathy Brown, much harder. And so we're trying everything to find her. And then Ryan somehow finds out, like, this is the stuff you have to do. Ryan somehow finds out the son who was in both episodes works at Loblaws or something. It doesn't matter where he works. I really shouldn't have said where he works. Anyways, he works somewhere, and he finds, like, just by trial and error, calling a bunch of random numbers till he gets this call and is like, "Are you this man?" And this man is like, "How did you get this number?" It's like, "I just tried a bunch of numbers. Do you want to be on a game show or a show about game shows?" I don't know exactly how you did it, Ryan, but it was amazing. And anyways, that's how we got
it. Was, you know what, that Kathy Brown I'd read about in an article before she was going to be on Family Feud Canada, and I kind of filed it in the back of my mind. And then I was so happy to get her in. I know I couldn't be in the studio for because of protocols last summer with the guests that we had, but I love, Tess, you telling me that Kathy Brown said, "There's someone that's been on more shows than me. Is this possible?" And I thought, well, in Canada she has, that's for sure. I was 1 year too young for Supermarket Sweep, and I was not a happy person at all.
Ryan, do you know the numbers? Like, I don't remember them, but how many have you been on versus her?
So I've been on, I have 9 TV, 1 radio, and 2 podcasts, and I believe Kathy's at 7. But in fairness, like, they're an eclectic 7 through Canadian television history.
Yeah, aren't they amazing?
And although I was sad that Guinness turned me down for a world record, because apparently my record request was too specific. So.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, they apparently most appearances by a game show contestant in multiple countries was too specific. So maybe the application fee wasn't that much, but you never know.
So wait, are we saying that Kathy would win the most Canadian game shows contestant?
If we're only going on English language, yes. I know someone has been on more French language shows than she has.
Okay, well, maybe it's too specific again.
Yeah, exactly. So, listen, folks, we planned this for 15 minutes. I'm not going to lie. We've got to half an hour. Let's take one more question before we go, Tess. Emily Diana Ruth, hi there, says, how do you guys imagine the world of game shows will change a lot in post-COVID? Will contestants be joined via Zoom in the future, and that will be the norm? You know, I think we're still going to see a return to the traditional game show format. I know of people that have been on game shows in the States, and the major thing is you don't have the audience there. And as someone who's been to something like 35 to 40 shows, some of you can see some of the stuff in my background. This, for example, is a card from Match Game, the Alec Baldwin version. I actually flew down to New York City, round trip in a day, just to see a taping. So I'd like those to come back for sure. But I think we're going to see new formats pop up. There was a format a number of years ago called Let's Ask America. And everyone Skyped in, everyone Zoomed in from home. And that was, oh, geez, that would have been about 7-8 years ago. So sometimes you have shows whereby people couldn't get in anyway, and they've embraced that. I don't know what your feelings are, I should say.
Yeah, I think, thanks for the question, Emily. I think that you're going to see a little bit, we touch on it a little bit in our 5th and final episode, so our series finale, which is a little bit of like, where are game shows going in the future and how can people interact more from home? And so we have some incredible people talk about it, like Stephanie Harvey, who is the winner of Canada's Smartest Person. She also runs she hosts a Twitch platform. And so she has her own channel there. And so she has a lot of insightful things to say. We have a YouTube and internet celebrity called Charlie McDonald, and he has a lot of insightful things to say about that. And so it's people coming from these worlds and like what Ryan is saying, we're going to probably keep the traditional format. How are we going to do it so it works for COVID? But also, like, what are these new things that we haven't even thought of yet, or we haven't considered could be like categorized as a game show? And where are those going to take us? So I think, there's maybe probably going to be these 2 spheres, but I think obviously there's going to be this thing that pie in the sky no one even understands is going to happen yet. And that's the way that, necessity is the mother of innovation.
And that's kind of how game shows have gone, when there was a show called Cash Mountain that came out of the UK that transformed into Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. And if you told people in the 60s that we were going to have game shows for $1 million, they would have laughed you out of the room.
Yeah.
Right. It's just everything goes with evolution. And I know someone talks on it in the future game shows, not spoiled too much, but they think at one point maybe we'll have a $1 billion game show.
Yeah, and he seems pretty certain about it in a like, this doesn't seem blue sky, this seems like a fact. $1 billion seems like a fact.
And I'd like to see the insurance policy that will pay out that $1 billion. Anyway, thank you everyone so much for watching, both joining us here on the YouTube broadcast and especially watching on Game TV. I will let you know tomorrow night on Game TV at 7 p.m. Eastern is episodes 203, comedy and game shows, and episode 204, prizes. And that'll be on Game TV at 7 p.m. Eastern. We'll be back here. I'll be back here again tomorrow night at 8 p.m. with another special guest, as well as on Wednesday after the broadcast. Please make sure to follow us on the socials. You can catch up on other things on the Game TV website, as well as canadasgameshows.com, our YouTube stream, our Facebook page, everything like that. And specifically, tomorrow night's guest will be noted game show expert Adam Nedeff, who is one of our panelists. Thank you so much for everyone to joining. We appreciate it. Thanks for sticking with us, and hope to see you again tomorrow. Bye-bye for now.
Ryan.
Thanks, Tess.
Thanks for having me. Bye, guys.
Bye.